So yeah, we ended the game in mock, and we went back there and won that game, and that kind of pole vaulted us into winning 10 games that year at Florida.
Can you say anything of what you were saying after that play happened? I mean, I'm just forever ingrained in my head.
I think it was like more of a hell yeah fist pump. I'm a big fist pump guy. You know what I'm saying? So I was a big fist pump guy, excited with all the players jumping up and down. That's the part of coaching you enjoy, is being able to celebrate a victory that you worked really hard for. But I mean, we saw improvement, and he came around, and the guy's still playing in the National Football League right now. So I mean, my point is you got to find other ways to motivate them, other ways to get them to do the things you want them to do, and to be the kind of guy you're talking about, where you play for the team, you play with effort, you play with energy. So you got to get all those things. You just got to figure out other ways to do it sometimes.
You are now listening to the District 2 Sports Podcast, available on Podbean, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. It costs you nothing to smash that like button. Leave us a review and follow District 2 Sports on Facebook, X, and Instagram for more content and coverage. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a treat it is tonight for the District 2 Sports Podcast with our next guest. I mean, it's been about 40 years since the journey began. How do I know? Because that's about the last time I saw him in person. So he has had stints on the major college level and as well as in the professional level with the NFL as a defensive line coach and a defensive coordinator. And as I told him earlier, the man needs a suitcase to carry his resume around when he does a job interview from now on. So it's none other than the big guy, Mr. Jeffrey Todd Grantham. Welcome, Coach. I can't even thank you enough for being here. I've been chasing you for 2 years, and I know things have with your contractual obligations, I know it's kept you from coming on, but hey, thanks a lot. The boys and I really, really appreciate
it. Man, I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to this. It's always good to get on with good people and, talk about, shoot, you guys down in your area, down in Danville. I mean, I remember playing those guys when I was at Pulaski County High School, and, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I'll start off, Coach. Just this year, I mean, it may not be, a big deal to you or according to your, resume or whatever, but you were inducted to the Hall of Fame there at Pulaski County this year. What does that mean to you as far as your career goes? And just kind of looking back on that.
Yeah. So, obviously, I've been in the coaching business for a long time, and I've recruited all over the Eastern Seaboard, Florida all the way up to New York, New Jersey, and a lot of stops in between. And I'll be honest with you, I've been very fortunate to be able to be from a place like Pulaski County. You kind of got to get what you earn. You work hard. Our football program was made in the winter. That's how you made it. A lot of good guys. I mean, I still talk to some of those guys. And I was fortunate that my jersey was retired a few years back while Coach Hicks was still living. And now with the induction into the Hall of Fame, that's where all the smart people went. I didn't even know they had the Hall of Fame, to be honest with you. That's where all the people from high school went that became doctors and things like that. I mean, I didn't even realize they had that part of it. But, it's just an honor to be a part of a community like Pulaski County, good people, hardworking people. And I'll be honest with you, I've recruited a lot of players through my time. And some of the best experiences I had as a player was being able to walk down those steps and hear the cougar growl and, the human chain and that kind of, that was just high school football. And that's what it's all about. And it's funny, I'll talk to kids now that you're recruiting. I'm like, you have no idea what it really should be like, because, they'll play in front of maybe 50 people or something like that. So I was really fortunate to be able to go to a place like Pulaski County, be around really good people that worked hard, believed in me, showed me a good vision and path. And I've really tried to take a lot of those things into my career as a coach to help people, because that's really what coaching was all about. Is one of the reasons I got into it was to be able to help young men and to be able to do those kind of things. So, everything that I've gotten in my life has been really from what I learned as being at Pulaski County High School, and then obviously went on to Virginia Tech, and from there got into coaching. But it all started at Pulaski County High School and being a part of the Cougar football program.
Coach, I have to ask a question. It's not even football related.
Yep.
But, when I'm sitting here looking for information on Coach Grantham,
Yep.
I get Wikipedia, dude. I mean, how do you get a Wikipedia page? What do I have to do to get a Wikipedia page?
I guess you got to have a little bit of age to you. I'm not sure. So, I've got a little bit of age on there, and you got to get a few stops along the way. And, I've been fortunate. I've been able to work. If you really think about my career, and we can talk about that as we get going. But from a coaching standpoint, if you think about it, I was fortunate enough throughout my career that I was able to coach for Frank Beamer, Mike Gundy, and Nick Saban. And when you look at all three of those guys, they're going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. And when you think about the schools that they were at, they really replica, or they are their schools. Frank Beamer built Virginia Tech to what it is. Mike Gundy is Oklahoma State football, and Nick Saban is arguably the greatest coach in college football history. And a lot of the things in my blueprint and my vision come from those guys. And what's funny is those guys, they have a different, they all have their different styles, but they're all the same. Meaning it's all about hard work, it's about accountability, and it's about commitment. And really, they just get to it a different way, but they all preach the same message. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of their staffs and on their teams, and be a part of. I've been fortunate in that regard of who I've been able to be around.
All right, so it doesn't take much to confuse me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
At all.
Yep.
So, if I'm not mistaken, you were an offensive guard or offensive tackle on the high school and the Virginia Tech level.
That's
you
right.
were not only that, you were also All-South, All-American as a senior.
Yeah.
So this is where I go off the tracks, and you know where I'm going with this.
How'd I get over?
How do you go from?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So what happened is when I decided that I wanted to be a GA, Frank Beamer hired me at Virginia Tech. Well, back in the day, you could only have 4 GAs. Okay. So we actually had 3 GAs on offense, and I was going to be one of those 3. And we had 1 GA on defense at the time. So we're getting in. And actually back then, Virginia Tech, we had our camps in June. That was after you went on vacation, you came in. People like to come to them because we called them team camps, and guys could get a couple extra. Well, Kevin Saunders, who is a high school coach and has been a high school coach in the state of Virginia, he was the only defensive GA, and the other 3 of us were on offense. Well, I was the last guy hired just because I was coming out of high school, out of college and all that. So anyway, Kevin took a head high school job and left. So it only left us with 3 GAs, but nobody was on defense. So anyway, they moved me over. Mike Clark was the coordinator. And actually, it was an advantage to me because as a defensive GA, what I did was break down the offense. So it was all blocking schemes. It was all formations. It was runs. The passing game wasn't what it is now. So basically, my job became easier because basically the things I'd done for the last 4 years, I just now broke it down from a defensive perspective. So then I got on defense and started working with it, and I liked it. And Beamer had told me, Frank had told me, he had said, hey, look, you move over for a year, good experience, and then I'll move you back. Well, to be honest with you, after the year, I said, hey, coach, I like it. I want to stay. So I ended up staying on defense and kind of took off and been over there ever since. So it really it's one of those things I always tell guys, man, it's about creating opportunity. I had an opportunity to coach, and I had an opportunity to be a GA. So wherever they put me, I was going to work. And it really made my job easier, and I enjoyed being over there. So I started learning it, and it went from there to what I am now.
So you spend your first basically 5 years out of college with Virginia Tech.
So what happened is it's funny is I was a GA, and Mike Clark at the time was the coordinator. And I've always been a guy that's believed that you work where your feet are. You know what I'm saying? And he was, and I was going to work. Like, you weren't going to outwork me. So I'd stay as late as I had to, do what I had to do, get everything ready for the next morning. So Mike was, I want to hire you. So this is when, what's funny, you talk about Frank Beamer, there would be no Frank Beamer in today's college football. Because when you go back and look at his record after the 6th year, I mean, he was under 500 as a coach. I mean, he was like 23-40 or something like that. So like nowadays you'd be fired because people aren't going to wait like that. You know what I'm saying? But, back then, ADs were really football guys, and Dave Brain was the football guy. And he's like, look, you're the right guy for the job, talking to Beamer. He goes, you're the right guy for the job. You just have the wrong people around you. Okay. And so anyway, during that time frame, Mike had made me what happened is we were going to hire a guy by the name of George Fasikas. Okay. Well, George was coming from Maryland at the time, and he took the job, and then it was like he started getting second thoughts, like, I don't know if I want this job or not. And I was there. Well, spring ball was going to start in like 10 days. And Mike Clark didn't want to lose me at all. So basically, George told me, he said, hey, look, he said, I'm going to think about this thing. He goes, and the way you went into our offices then, you would walk into the hallway and you made a left, and the coach's office were down the hallway. Well, George's office was down on the right, and he was always in there early, and his door was always open. He said, hey, look, Todd, he goes, I'm going to make a decision on the night what I'm going to do. Because basically Mike had told me, and Beamer had told me, he said, if George decides to leave, we're going to promote you. So hell, I didn't get any sleep that night, right? And I'm like, what happened? So anyway, I go in that morning. I go in about 7:15, getting ready for 7:30 staff. I get in there about 7:15. I turn the hallway, and I look, and his door's closed. So he wasn't going to take the job. So he didn't take the job. So they hired me. And the first year we did not do that well. We had a turnover, and actually Phil Almation came in. And this is when we really took off. When Phil came in, we really started talking about culture, discipline, those kind of things. And that was the year that we ended up going to play in the Independence Bowl. Back then that was a big deal to go to bowl. Bowl games were big back then. It ain't like it is now. Like, we were going to the Independence Bowl, and that was the first bowl victory in Virginia Tech history. And wow. we beat Indiana in we beat Indiana in that was the second bowl victory. Okay. Let me take that back. The first victory was actually when I was a player. Bill Dewey had gotten fired, and we won the Peach Bowl on a last-second kick by Chris Kinzer against NC State.
I remember that.
And then when I started coaching, my second year in coaching, we went into the Independence Bowl, and we beat Indiana. And really, that's when the program took off. We won 27 games in 9 years, and we had a lot of good players, and we really got it rolling at that point. So I was able to see a program, because if you look at my resume, I've always been around went to programs that weren't very good. Like, they weren't good jobs, and we made them better jobs. There's a reason there was an opening. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And I kind of got able to see that at an early age about coming in, ability, toughness, relationship with players, all that kind of stuff is important. And we kind of got it rolling, and when we won 27 games over the next 3 years. And in fact, a little bit of Virginia Tech history. I'm the first guy. I started on the Peach Bowl team, and then I coached in the Sugar Bowl. Wow. That was the first guy to ever do that as a player coach. Okay. So I do got that little bit of nugget as being a Virginia Tech guy and everything. And after the Sugar Bowl against Texas, after we beat them, we were top 5 in the country. Nick Saban called. And that's really when it took off, because, Nick's a pretty intimidating guy. So I went up and interviewed. And the reason I got an interview was Gary Trankel was the offensive coordinator at the time at Virginia Tech. And he had left the year before to go be Nick's offensive coordinator at Michigan State. So basically I went up, I interviewed, got the job, got associated with Nick, and my career kind of took off from there.
Well, I was going to say, talking about Chris Kinzer, he was a linebacker posing as a field goal kicker. I remember him specifically. He was a big boy kicking the field goal. So
yeah, I'm a good friend of his. The word we used was he was fat. Okay, you can say that, but the word I use is he was kind of a fat. He was kind of
Gotcha.
fat. Okay,
You know,
kind of chubby. And sometimes I'll say chubby. Okay,
I got
'cause
you.
he'll probably listen to this podcast. He'll probably want to be on it after this, just so he can say something about me. But that was the words I used. Is it chubby or fat kicker,
Perfect.
And everything.
All right. I told you earlier that I had about 13 questions to ask you, and I'm probably about 2 in. So
You're good.
So I want, I didn't know how far we should go into things, but the Michigan State thing really intrigued me. So, and plus I'd never gotten it straight from you or for anybody else basically, but you get to be assistant head coach there at Michigan State.
Yep.
And I believe Smith is relieved of his duties, if I'm not mistaken, or released.
No. So what happened is okay. So I was at Michigan State. So I went to Michigan State from Virginia Tech with Nick Saban. Okay. And I was there for 3 years. And the reason I had done that is I always wanted to coach in pro football. And I knew that Nick Saban had been a defense coordinator at the Cleveland Browns. He'd been with Belichick, so I go there with the idea that I'm going to do a good job for him, bust my tail, and he's going to go to pro football and he'll take me with him. I mean, that was my guide, right?
Right.
And everything. So I go there. Well, what happened is at the time when I was there, we had a graduate assistant working for us named Brian Polian. Well, that was Bill Polian's son. Okay. And he worked for us. And then, so Bill was actually, he come to spring practice because he wanted to visit his son. So he got to watch me coach and teach the players and all that kind of stuff. And I had no knowledge of this, but he had basically written my name down. So after the third year being there, Nick was still there. They had an opening with the Indianapolis Colts and for their D-line job. And I was lucky, you talk about guys, I got to go work with Vic Fangio. Okay. So Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator and Jim Moore was the head coach at the time. And so I went up, I interviewed for the job and I got it. And I was in 11 years after that and everything. And that was actually how I got into pro football, was because Bill Polian had seen me coaching at Michigan State. And when he was visiting his son, he made a note of it. They had a job opening at Indianapolis and he called and, I went up, I interviewed with those guys and they offered me the job, which honestly was the easiest transition. When I went from Virginia Tech to Michigan State, that was hard because Nick Saban and look, everything, a lot of the things that I do now in my time now is still from Nick Saban's tree. Systematically, our defense is very, you change things as things, adapt and gravitate to certain things. But the core of what you do has really been from Nick Saban's system. And I talked to him for years and still do, about football. And I've had an opportunity to be offered the coordinator's job for him on 4 different occasions since then. But I went back to pro football, and at the time with the Colts, we had the greatest turnaround in the history of the game. They were 3-13 the year before, and we went 13-3, and we won. I think we won. We were kind of like the Bears are now. We won like 8 games in like the last 2 minutes of the game. You know what I mean? So we won those games, and anyway, I was there for a little bit. Then I started getting the itch to be a coordinator. Of course, we got let go with Indianapolis, and I ended up going to Houston with Vic, and I was with the Texans on their inaugural season. I was there, and then from there, I got to go be the coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, and with Romeo Crennel. And hell, we went 10-6. We were the first team at the time that won 10 games. You might know what happened in Cleveland. We were one of the first teams to win 10 games and not get into playoffs. That was when they had the 16-game season. We were 10-6, and we got knocked out of the playoffs because Indianapolis had already clinched their spot, and they rested Peyton Manning against the Titans. So the Titans somehow beat us on a whatever tiebreaker system kind of deal. So anyway, I was in Cleveland, and then from there I went to Dallas, and I was with the Cowboys. So I got to be in the old Dallas Stadium, Okay. And then I got to be the first year in the new stadium. So I got to see the bells and whistles on that. And that was interesting. But, I enjoyed my time as a coordinator at Cleveland and wanted to get back to that. So, and my kids were at the age, because in pro football, it is a business. You know what I'm saying? And I know college is like that now a little bit, but those kids are a lot younger. But in college, like when we go to bowl games in college, I mean, my son would go down and play college football 2020, whatever it was, Madden at the time. I mean, he'd go down and play with those guys, you know what I'm saying, on the video games, because they'd have like a little suite for those guys to play to your house and things like that. So it was a little bit more of a family thing. Well, I felt like that with my kids' age, it was more important to get back into the pageantry of college football. You know what I mean? And I kind of like that and wanted to do that. So I ended up going back to Georgia and being the coordinator at Georgia with the Bulldogs. And, of course, Mark Richt he had just come off winning the Weed Eater Bowl, which if you're winning the Weed Eater Bowl at Georgia, you're getting ready to get your ass fired because they don't want to go to that game. So we actually ended up going to 2 SEC championship games. And at the time, over a 3-year span, we had won the most games in the 120 years of that school, and went from there. So anyway, that's how I got back into college and was there for a little bit.
Coach, I got 2 for you, and
Yep.
these are very personal questions here. If you don't know, I am a huge Florida Gator fan. I'm here in Jacksonville,
Yep.
Florida, so
Okay.
this is an honor to talk with you. My first question, though, being in Jacksonville, you've been on both sides of the ball there with Georgia and Florida. If you could just talk about what it's like to be in Jacksonville for that Florida Georgia game, and I'll ask my second question here in a second.
Yeah. So first of all, that's a pretty heated rivalry. I mean, as you come, it's called the largest cocktail party, right? So you can kind of see the fans as you're coming in, and you come across the bridge, and you're getting ready to go down the stadium, and they're pretty vocal. I mean, they're going to give you their opinion of you, and it's not really good. It's not really good if you're on the other team, right? And they're pretty passionate about it. I've been on both sides of it. They're pretty passionate. A lot of good players in that. Fortunate to win quite a few of those games. I remember that we ended up winning three of the 4 when I was at Georgia when we played Florida, and then when I went with Dan, we were able to win a game over there. But pretty passionate fans. It's loud in the sense that the stadium is basically split, so it's pretty loud. A lot of energy, a lot of good times for people. So it's a fun game, and the players obviously get hype for it and that kind of deal. So it was fun to be a part of that.
Coach, I was actually there for the last time Florida won when you guys won in 2020. So thank you so much for that win. I appreciate that. My second question for you is, I've been in the Swamp as a fan up in the stands. Mm-hmm. It's loud, but I think you've probably been in the booth and probably been on the field as well. What's that atmosphere like there in the Swamp when you're there?
Well, first of all, they don't call it the Swamp for nothing, because if you play a day, you don't sweat, right? So the day games in there in the summer in September can be pretty brutal. And they're pretty hot. But the energy in that place is pretty loud. It does affect the other team, particularly, their offense with crowd noise. I think the loudest I ever heard it was when we beat Auburn there. When I was there, we beat Auburn. Running back busted one for like 89 yards for a touchdown to put us up by 2 scores. And we ended up winning the game. That was the year that we ended up going to I think it was the bowl game, the Chick-fil-A Bowl, and it was a New Year's 6-day bowl at the time, and we ended up playing Michigan and beating Michigan. So it was a lot of energy in that. It does affect the other team. They quite haven't had the success as of late, but the fans still show up because they're pretty passionate about their sport.
Todd, let me ask you a quick question. I'm kind of going to go backwards just a few minutes. And, I had a different question prepared for this, but I'm going to ask it kind of backwards since you've already gone into it a bit.
Yep.
So if you would have been, or you probably were, and I think you were, a serious candidate for the head coaching job there at Michigan State, if so, and if you would have taken that position, does that change the course of history for you?
I don't really know. I mean, once you get into the head coaching role, you take on the team of your own. It does change it from the standpoint of, if you look at the people that I've always been the head coach of the defense. If you really look, other than working for Nick Saban, everyone else that I've worked for has been primarily an offensive guy. And it's kind of been like, hey, fix the defense. You know what I'm saying? So, I guess it would be in the sense of, if you were the head coach at Michigan State, then basically you're the head coach of the team. But really, I've kind of been the head coach of the defense everywhere I've been, other than when I was with Nick. And then obviously Nick's going to be in those meetings with what you're doing and those kind of things. So, I've enjoyed my career, and really that's a pretty good question, because that gets into, a lot of people are like, why'd you take the Oklahoma State job, right? So, well, going back a little bit, when I left Florida, I went to Alabama for a year, and I was there, and Nick had offered me the coordinator's job at Alabama. Okay, well, this is when this whole NIL portal thing started, right? Which, look, this whole thing is a mess, and it's not the players' fault. Don't blame the kids. It's the adults. It's the adults that made these rules, and there are no rules. Okay, so Nick was not a fan of it, and I wasn't a fan of it, and just the whole system. And so I knew that Nick was going to leave like pretty soon. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew within a couple of years he was going to be out. Well, at the same time he offered me the job, was at the New Orleans Saints, and he was the head coach, but he was really the defensive coordinator. You know what I mean? So he kind of needed a second lieutenant D-line coach, but I want you to do some other things for me. So basically I went there, and honestly, after the second year, I realized I missed being a coordinator in college. I missed the whole controlling, who you recruit. I missed calling it on game day. I missed setting it up structurally with what you do. So I kind of missed all that. The Oklahoma State job was open. I was excited about it, because people were like, why would you take that job? Because they were 0-9 the year before, and they had a losing record. Well, like, I don't back down from a challenge. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't back down from a challenge when I was a player. I haven't backed down from a challenge as a coach, because if you go through my resume, weren't very good. We went to the SEC championship game. When I went to Michigan State, they were 110th in D. Okay. When I went to Florida, they were 4-7, and we went bowl games. Went to the SEC championship game, and really that hasn't been done since. I embrace those kind of challenges. You know what I'm saying? So when I took that job at Oklahoma State, I knew the situation. Like, I knew that they to keep Gundy, so people were kind of on the deal. So that was one of the reasons I was like, hey, look, if I'm going to do this, you got to give me a 3-year guaranteed contract. And Gundy was on. And I'll tell you what, man, working for him was awesome. Like I told you, like that Nick Saban, Frank Beamer, Mike Gundy, like them dudes, like they don't make those guys like that anymore. He was awesome. Well, after game 3, they fired him. So we were 1-2, and they fired him. And the reason they did it then is because 2 years before that, they had lost to South Alabama. Okay. Same situation, 1-2, and the dude reeled off 9 straight and went to the big. And they did not want to have a repeat of that, because then he'd still be there. He'd been there for 21 years. You know what I'm saying? So like, it was one of those. So I knew that. So anyway, when they made Meacham because Meacham had played there, when they made him the interim head coach, the head coach is going to always want to have guys that philosophically believe the way he believes from a work ethic standpoint. So that was when I was released a couple of days of each other, and I've gotten to hang out, man. So right now I'm just looking for the next opportunity to kind of see what I want to do and what that challenge is. So really, it's really kind of sad, because we would have changed that program. Like, if you look, the guys we brought in. So I got hired a year basically of today. I got hired December 12th of last year. And we had basically the portal closed at Christmas, and we had to get our roster intact then. So we had to get our whole roster in basically 10 days. And I had to hire a new coaching staff, because Gundy was like, I want you to be the head coach of the defense. So I had to hire a whole new staff and bring guys in. If you went back and Googled like we had really good players up front. We had brought in some guys to make an impact that I didn't do a good enough job. And we didn't really have the numbers from a personnel standpoint. Is we didn't do a good enough job in the back end with bringing guys in. Like, of our top 17 guys up front in D-line and linebackers, we brought in 15 new guys. Well, in the back end, out of our top 9 guys, we only brought in 2. So that was the area that we didn't do a good enough job in defensively to make it happen. But we had them coming, and we knew the issue. It just takes more than one portal to get it right when you were 0-9 the year before. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But that's the decision that they made, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But what's crazy is we actually had our 26 recruiting class done, and we were getting ready. We knew that coming into this portal, like it's going to open up in January, our number one target was to address the secondary with the portal. And then, because we had the other guys up front for another year. Now, all those guys are going to leave now because of the coaching change and that kind of thing. So we just really ran out of time, to be honest with you. It would have been changed, but they wanted to make that change well before that third game. It was just a matter of when they wanted to do it. They saw the timing was right. So from that, and we'll understand that, and we'll get ready for our next opportunity and go create a top defense somewhere else.
Coach, I wanted to go back to those 10 years in the NFL after the Michigan State stint. And I was just curious because we talked about a few numbers a few minutes ago. When you get to the Colts, you go like 3-13, and then you turn it around and go 13-3. You finish with a record of 29-19 in those years.
Yep.
You go on to Houston, you go to Cleveland as a D coordinator. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the 30 range is where the team finished at in total defense. But then you go to the Cowboys, and then points allowed per game goes from 13th to 2nd. What is the kind of the difference is it a culture difference? Is it a personnel difference? What is the difference in those situations where, results are better than others in those situations?
It's all of the above. It starts with players. I mean, look, like I'm a good coach, but I mean, there's a lot of good coaches out there. You know what I'm saying? You got to have personnel too. I think the things that you talk about there, like when I was in Cleveland, I was there for 3 years. In year one, we were not very good as a team. Okay, now they weren't good the year before, but we were not very good as a team. But we actually finished defensively 11th in the National Football League in scoring defense. Okay, well, stats are really can be very misleading. Does that make, you know what I'm saying? Because it's really about winning the game. And our general manager, Phil Savage, was like, man, we're 11th in total defense. If we can just keep the defense like we are, and we get the offense right, we can roll. And I'm like, hell no, that ain't, no. And he goes, why you say that? I go, because, and we were so bad on offense that, in pro football, it's all about winning the game. So we would be down in a game, say 17-6, and it was third quarter. Well, they were just going to run the clock out. They were going to find a way to end the game. And that's totally different than if the score was 17-17 or we were winning 2017. Now they're going to push the ball down the field. So those numbers change because now they've got to go score. You know what I'm saying? So because we were so poor on offense, like our stats on defense look pretty good. I'm like, look, we still got to get guys that can cover. We got to get a guy that can rush. I mean, we have issues on defense. Now we're masking it, but we're not getting a true indicator here because of the way our team is. The game is ending before the fourth quarter starts. You know what I'm saying? So we worked on it, and we ended up winning 10 games, getting to 10-6, and going from there with that. And then you talk about going to Dallas. I've had an opportunity to coach the highest paid player in pro football 3 different times. All the way back to when I was at Michigan State, I had Julian Peterson. And then when I went to Georgia, we took a guy named Justin Houston and moved him to outside backer. And then obviously in Dallas, Hall of Famer DeMarcus Ware. I mean, so it was kind of like, how do we get DeMarcus lined up so he can wreck the game? So we taught the same stuff. It's just DeMarcus could find ways to affect the game more. You know what I mean? So I think to answer your question, it's a little bit of everything, meaning you got to have talent, okay? But you got to also have accountability. You got to have toughness. You got to have a work ethic to you. and you still got to do those things and put in the time, put in the work. And those are the things that allow you to have an opportunity to be good. And then you get to go do it on the field. So to be able to do those things, it takes a little bit of everything.
Well, now I told you earlier I was going to add a little bit of humor, a little bit of color to things. So I figured this would be the perfect time to go into this. So you leave the NFL, come back to Georgia. All right. So were you kind of pissed off? I mean, did it harden you a little bit? I mean,
no, actually. So when I went to, I wanted to go to Georgia because I wanted to go back to being a coordinator. Okay. I wanted to go to Georgia. And like I said, my kids were at the age, like they could come to practice. You know, Mark Rick was a big family guy. So like Sunday nights, the kids would come over for family dinner on Sundays, you know, those kind of things. I mean, you're not doing those things in pro football. You know what I mean? We'd go to a bowl game and like at the bowl site in the hotel, they'd have what would put these video games. They had like a hospitality suite for the players and your kids. So my son would be down there playing football video games, Madden with Justin Houston or Jarvis Jones or whoever. Well, my son thought those guys walked on water, you know what I mean? And everything. And then, you know, what's interesting though is, and it's a little bit different now, but like when you're in pro football, I mean, those guys get paid and money's a little bit of not an issue for those guys. Right. And they kind of spend money at times. And then you go back to college and you see guys that just have a vision of getting there. You know what I mean? And that's what excited me is, you know, being able to see kids in college that had a vision or dream to be successful, you know, in football. And I'll be honest with you, look, not many guys make it. So, you know, the ones that do, that's great. But the other guys that get to go out and graduate and live a productive life and still stay in touch, I mean, that's awesome to me. But just those guys having that vision and dream about working to get to the National Football League and being a good player. And you kind of realize as a coach, like these guys really don't know, you know what I mean? Like they don't really know what it's like. And you can kind of educate them, you know, from your experiences. And then you get to see guys grow. I mean, there's a lot of growth in a player, you know, in high school or from high school, his high school days through his college years. And then you get to be a part of that. You know, I've been lucky enough that as a coordinator, I've had over 50 I've coached. And while those are great, the other guys that didn't graduate that still text me Merry Christmas or Happy Father's Day or, hey, I just got a new job. I mean, you know, those things, it's just a relationship. So it's a different deal. But it really gets back to a relationship with your players and that kind of thing. So to answer your question, I wanted to go back because I wanted to be a coordinator. I like the atmosphere of college. I liked affecting young people's lives. And I just wanted to go that route with me, particularly when my kids were at the age they were.
Well, I need to tell you that this was the time that I reacquainted myself with you and fell in love with you even more because there was a couple things that took place in those early years that I really enjoyed. And,
Yep.
you know, while you were at Georgia, I think there was a ball game that involved you and Vandy that there might have been a couple words exchanged after the game that I was really enthralled in and thrilled to watch you go at it. So I thought I enjoyed that, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But the other question I really wanted to ask was, you followed Mullen to Florida, okay? So when you get to your office on the first day, was there a picture of maybe Chase Henry or anybody like that on the wall, or maybe a picture of you, you know, doing a certain sign? I mean,
that wasn't actually, I met him, and you know, that was the part of when I went to Georgia, like Mike Bobo, who's now at Georgia, right? So Mike Bobo and I were the coordinators, and with Coach Rick, you had to handle your side, you had to create a toughness. Like when I first went there, and it's funny, when you go to places that aren't winning, sometimes there's a sense of entitlement and there's not that work ethic that you need, right? So you have to find ways to communicate to guys, like it's about culture, it's about toughness, it's about never giving up. Well, what happened in that game you're talking about is that was the first time we had played them, and coming off the field, the guy said, damn, they beat us again. And I was like, hell with that shit. We're going to block this kick. Well, at that time, Chaz was over there. He getting ready to do the Gator chomp. I'm like, hey, man, screw you. You're going to choke. So anyway, that's kind of how it got started. Well, you know what's funny is when that happened, that was about the time my jersey got retired at Pulaski County, right? So Joel Hicks walks up to me at the thing and says, hey, boy, just want to let you know I did the same shit when I was, I don't know, he was somewhere in West Virginia coaching. And he goes, I did the same shit. So anyway, that goes back to that. But hey, man, I'm competitive. I want to win. And if I can find a way to affect you, I'm going to. The thing I'll tell you is I've never gotten a penalty. I mean, like everybody talks about Muschamp. Muschamp's gotten penalties. Hell, I've never gotten a penalty. So I've yet to get a penalty in a game. I know my limits, and I'm going to go to them to find ways to get our guys to play.
Before Devin asks you his question, remember this one. You can't carry my jock in a tractor trailer, okay? Just remember that one. Okay?
I got it.
Coach, me and Gregory have been fighting over this question all night. He keeps saying he's going to steal it from me, but
right.
I got to ask, that first game, well, not your first game, but that first season where you're at Florida, y'all go back to Mississippi State, you and Coach Mullen. And I just want to talk about that last play. The image that's going to be burned in my head forever of you is that last play of the game. Donovan Steiner I think you sent 8 blitzers.
Yeah, we call it. So the blitz is called Maka. So I learned that blitz through Nick, and I've always had it with me. So what's interesting about that is we always have what we call fourth down, got to win it, right? So we always look at the team we're going to play, and you got to research the coordinator because you may only get a handful of plays, habit type plays in a game. So you may get a couple of years. So we're going to go back through a coordinator's years. So it was 4th and 8 around midfield, and we had to stop them. And I want to say the score was like 13-6. It was a 1 possession game. I know they only had 6 points. I think it's 13-6, and we had to end the game. And it was 4th down. Well, our players already knew what was going to be called. That's what I talk about the mindset. Like they already knew Maka was the call, and we were coming. And Donovan loved it. So yeah, we ended the game in Maka, and we went back there and won that game. And that kind of pole vaulted us into winning 10 games that year at Florida.
Can you say anything of what you were saying after that play happened? I mean, I'm just forever ingrained in my head.
I think it was like more of a hell yeah fist pump. I'm a big fist pump guy. You know what I'm saying? So I was a big fist pump guy, excited with all the players jumping up and down. That's the part of coaching you enjoy, is being able to celebrate a victory that you worked really hard for. It was pretty hostile environment because we were going back. They were more pissed at Dan than at me. I'd only been there for 8 months and Dan had left. And so I ended up going with him. And it was pretty hostile crowd. They had a good team at that time. They had a great defense. And we ended up beating them 13-6 and celebrating and kind of pole vault us in. And what happened is it's funny you talk about that game is, that was a stepping stone for us because then the kids started believing. I mean, not that they didn't believe before, but we had just beaten a good team. You know what I'm saying? So now all the hard work you talk about and the dedication and accountability and all that, you got something to show for it. And it's a part of the process, and it helps you win games down the road, which we ended up doing.
Coach, I have a 2-parter for you. So last couple questions for me. So you played under Joel Hicks there at Pulaski, and then I think your junior season, Coach Beamer comes in there. You have to correct me on that one. What is it like playing for him, Frank Beamer? And then how do those two coaches kind of influence your career as a head coach or as a coach?
Yeah, I think that you always I've always kind of patterned my career off people I respect, and you're going to have your own who you are. Like you always got to be who you are, right? But when Joel Hicks first came to Pulaski County, it was discipline, accountability, you grit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, those were the things you had to have. Basically, that's the kind of stuff that was instilled with him to me. And I had a great position coach at the time. Your position coach, like Randy Flincham was my position coach when I first went there. I loved the guy. I'd run through the wall for the guy. I mean, if he'd have said run through the wall, I'd have just said, how far you want me to go? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just because that was the way I was brought up. You believe in your coaches, and that's the thing you do. But, Coach Hicks always emphasized the way you win in the fall is the work you put in the winter and the summer. And we would go down, and at the time we had a field house, which, is basically a box, and we'd shut the door in the winter. We'd shut the door. He'd turn the heat up to like 85 degrees, and we'd be in there. We have a mat out, and we'd do mat drills. And you did that for an hour. And like, you just push guys, and you encourage guys and that kind of thing. So really, those are the things from a career standpoint that Coach Hicks developed in me. And then with Coach Beamer, it became more. I actually was a GA for him. I played for him for a couple of years, but then as a GA, the thing about Frank Beamer is he's a guy that kind of believes the same stuff. He may not be quite as demonstrative kind of guy as, say, Joel was, but he also believed, I'm going to hire good people and I'm going to let them grow and do it. I'm going to let them do their job. So he did not micromanage you, so you got to grow as a coach with him. But he always felt like, if you're just honest with guys, you have a relationship with guys, and you respect guys and teach guys, that you'll be able to get what you need out of them. So those two guys really did have a big impact on my career and what I've done. And I still follow it today, because even in the day of this NIL stuff, I mean, kids, the good players want to be coached. They want to be coached. They want to be developed because they want to have success. And they still run through the wall for you. But the difference is nowadays you got to tell them why. Like back when we played, coach said run through the wall. Hell, you just run through the wall because he had coach on his name, right?
Yep.
Well, now you kind of got to have a little more relationship with them. They got to have a little, and they got to believe in you. And so that relationship piece is really important. But once they believe in you, the kids nowadays will run through the wall for you too. It just takes a little bit longer to get there.
And just a tidbit of information for Gregory and Devin. When Joel Hicks coached a football game, it didn't matter if it was 20 degrees below zero. He was always going to wear coaching shorts, his coaching shoes, and then he would have a sweatshirt on. That was it. I never saw the man in long pants ever at a game. Never.
Yeah, I changed that philosophy when I went to East Lansing in Michigan. I'm like, no, I hold up here. So that was me, right? When I first started coaching, I'm gonna wear shorts, right? It was like 5 degrees out here one time, and I'm like, man, it's freezing. And I finally realized that, like, these kids ain't gonna play any damn better if I'm in shorts or sweats. I'm putting some sweats on and getting warm, and I'll still coach you, but I'm going to be warm. So I kind of changed that philosophy as I got older, and I put on some sweats and everything.
All right, Coach. I'm going to ask kind of maybe a serious kind of question. Maybe it gets down to a little bit of brass tacks here. Mm-hmm. So were you a glutton for punishment going back to the Saints in 23-24? Or, I mean,
yeah. So go ahead.
And let me go to the second part of this question is this. I read a couple of negative comments, and that's kind of the reason why I proceeded with the glutton for punishment kind of thing.
Yeah.
I read a couple of I've considered nasty comments from a certain individual that played for the Saints. Yeah. And what do you have to say to those that throw comments like that out there?
So what happens is and you're talking about Cam Jordan.
Yeah.
Is I'd make a decision. Like I said, I could have either become the coordinator at Bama, or I could have went to pro football. Well, the lifestyle in pro football is easier than college because the way the calendar is, the rules and all that. And I knew Nick wasn't going to coach forever. So I went back, was a big part of, Dennis's system. Dennis is like, we got our system, but he wanted me to do fronts, pressures, and kind of manage that stuff. If he had the coverages, how we want to do our fronts and stuff like that. So, I kind of did that, but it wasn't like you were the coordinator, but you gave a lot of stuff and inputs, right? Well, if you really look at the Saints, I mean, they're a really old team. You know what I'm saying? If you look at, they're a really old team. So what happens is when guys get old, mentally, they're still sharp because your mind is still good, but your body doesn't move like that used to, right? So when you have a guy like Carl Granderson on one side, and then you go and you sign a guy like Chase Young, okay, and you're paying him $15+ million, and you got to improve your edge rush, you got to play your best players, okay? And, you try to find ways to get everybody reps, and, that's not going to sit well with guys that have pride, because you're talking about a Hall of Fame guy. You're talking about a guy that's going to be, in the Hall of Fame, has had a great career. But at the same time, as father time goes and things dwindle, you're not the same player you used to be. Does that make sense? And sometimes that hurts. Well, basically my job with Dennis was to manage it and to make sure that I got the best players on the field. So that's what I was told to do. So that's what I did.
Next question. It kind of goes hand in hand with that. I'm the type, and I tell these two kids right here of mine that I can sit down and watch a 9-6 ball game, such as what I think the Sugar Bowl between Alabama and LSU was not too awful long ago. I can sit there and watch that game, but very few and far between does that ever happen when you see this defensive battle. So today, how come defenses cannot stay on the field or stay off the field and stop offenses? And, I thought
the rules.
I thought of three teams, and I wanted to know if they could compete today. And this is on the professional level. So I thought about the 70s, basically defenses of the no-name defense, Dolphins. I thought about the Cowboys in the late 70s, and, of course, the Steelers. Could they play in today's game? They
would play. They just wouldn't have the numbers they had back then, because a couple things is one, offenses are more complicated now. It's still the passing game. It's a more sophisticated passing game. You got quarterbacks that can really throw the ball. Even when the fans think that, oh, this guy's not a very good quarterback in the National Football League, he's a pretty good quarterback. You know what I'm saying? But relative to the other guys, he's not as good, because it's a quarterback-driven league. And just like you said a minute ago, like you like a 9-6 game, but your sons don't. Well, most people don't. Most people want to see scoring, just like soccer, right? People talk about soccer. Well, soccer will never be a popular sport over football in the United States because there's not enough points scored. Okay. And therefore they want to see points scored. So the way the rules are in pro football, you can't touch a guy after 5 yards. Well, that leads to penalties, which extend drives and give you yards. And it's just hard to stop them. So basically, and that's what they want. They want a 3-hour game, 3:15 game. They want to see teams be able to move the ball. They want it to be a one-possession game, and they want to have points on the board. And that's why. It's not that defenses were better back then. The defenses nowadays are pretty innovative, and guys can do more than one thing, and there's a lot of disguise in what people do and those kind of things. It's just that, one, quarterbacks are really talented. Offenses are really sophisticated with what they're doing in the passing game, and the rules are going to be in the advantage of the offense to keep the ball moving down the field to create points. So that's why it's like that.
Coach, I have something to talk about your next job. What you're going to do next? I mean, I think you said right now.
You know what? So when I left Oklahoma State, I've got 2 years on my contract. So really, I'm going to wait and see what the opportunity is. I still enjoy coaching. I like impacting young people. So I'm just going to wait and see what that opportunity is. I mean, we're going to have a good defense. It's just a matter of when that happens. So it's really just evaluating situations as they come up. But I think with where I am in my career, I'm going to be pretty selective on it and make sure it's a good fit for me and my family. And I'm going to enjoy it. I can tell you that, because I enjoy being around the sport and young people and all that. So I think it's just kind of a wait and see approach right now. But fortunately, I got some time to be able to make that choice.
Coach, can I pitch something to you, a destination for you?
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
All right. So first thing, true football culture, no scholarships, no NIL distractions, none of that stuff you have to worry about. Okay. All right. Recruitment, you have, Route 29, you have, the 757, you have the 804, all in the same area up there. So a lot of great recruitment there in the South Side, Virginia. You can put your stamp on this program. You can build it up from the ground up and do what you want with it. I think you would do some great stuff with it.
It's pretty close to us, isn't it?
It's really close. Really close to Big G. So he would be right there with you every game, post conferences, anytime you need him. It's the Averett University Cougars head football job. So,
oh man,
just give it a thought if you want to look at that. Maybe in the future.
I got you. Hey, you never say never in this world, right? You never say never. So, we'll see.
And here I was going to tell them we know people. I mean, I was thinking more like, hey, we can get you in touch with Mike London up at William and Mary, and maybe Scott Abel down at Rice.
Mike London interviewed with us when I was at Virginia Tech. I know Mike. Mike's done a good job. I know Mike. He interviewed for us as a linebacker coach, I believe, when I was at Virginia Tech.
Scott Abel, he really loved Devin because Devin has played Madden or whatever, some kind of football, some college football game, and took Rice and played with the Rice Owls team and he actually introduced himself as a scat back or something in there, and Abel went crazy. He wanted to know how well Devin could present himself and get into the program right now. So it's kind of crazy.
There you go.
Well, look. I needed to ask you, this is one of my top questions.
All right.
Do you have a house in every time zone?
Not anymore. I have one house. I have a house I have a lake house down in Georgia in a place called Reynolds Plantation, and that's it, man. That's all I got.
I just looking at the resume, I said, you got to have somewhere central that he can go.
Yeah. So that I figured, that was funny. So you guys know Tom Moore, right?
Oh yeah.
Tom Moore is at Tampa. He's at Tampa Bay. Tom is Tom's like 84, 80. He might be older than that, man. And Tom has no hobbies and all he wants to do is coach. And he and I worked together in Indianapolis. Of course, I was a young coach back then. And when you go to look at houses, it's like, oh, can you afford it? Whatever. And Tom was like, oh, hell, don't worry about that. He goes, because in 3 years, we ain't gonna get the job done and they're gonna fire your ass, or we're gonna. So you ain't gonna be in that house in 3 years anyway. So that was Tom Moore's philosophy on buying a house to coach. He goes, just spend as much you want to spend because in 3 years you ain't gonna be in it anyway.
So can you go back to Tech and sit down and watch a football game with Mr. Franklin coaching?
No, that ain't gonna happen. I can tell you that right now.
Beautiful. I had to get that last one in.
Yeah. He I to this day I credit him because of his actions. The players knew what all happened, and it was Sean Williams at the time, and Mark Richt had not beaten Florida in like 8 years, right? And that was when we were at Vanderbilt, and we beat them in the last minutes. Like they blocked a punt, we were up by 7, and we stopped them. We sacked them on the end of the game. Jarvis sacked a guy. It got a little testy. We're all competitive. Things happen. But the players knew what happened, and the players like, Coach, you had our back. I'm like, you're damn right I got your back. I always got your back. Well, we went out the next week and beat Florida, and we actually beat them the next 3 years. And to this day, I credit that action, that happening, to letting us beat Florida the next week, because the players kind of believed that whatever you said they would do, and ended up being pretty good for us.
Coach, just a couple more from me, and then we'll get out of your hair and everything. But just looking around college football right now, the coaching carousel, you see Lane Kiffin, everybody's fighting over him, Florida, LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to ask, what does it take to be successful at the highest levels of college football now? I mean, there's only three active college coaches who have won a national championship right now. I mean, but everybody's fighting for these guys who haven't made it to that point yet. How do you?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I said before. Frank Beamer in year 6 was like 20-40 as a head coach. Well, if you're 20-40 as a head coach in year 6 right now, you probably got fired in years 4 and 5, because it's kind of like our society. Nobody's patient anymore, right? So number one, you have that. Number two, there has to be alignment at the top. Okay. In other words, with your administration, with your athletic director, with your head coach, there has to be vision on how you want to build your program. Okay. And then that carries down to the coordinator, or to the coordinators, the position coaches, and all that. And really, there has to be a vision for how you want to build the program. And it's still built through discipline, accountability, and toughness. Those are the 3 things that I'll tell you that every program needs to have. You just get to them different ways, because nowadays you have this NIL, this portal thing, right? So first of all, the portal needs to be a supplement for your football team. It can't be. Now I know guys have, done it, like Ole Miss has done it, been very successful. Well, That's one of the reasons Lane left, because that's not sustainable. There's going to be a time when that folds. Well, as soon as that folds, you're going to get fired. And the best examples of that right now are, look at Colorado and Florida State. Both of those programs went really high. They're all portal. And when they went into portal, they've been really bad since, because you don't know. Like I said, last year at this time, I had to go basically complete a roster within 17 days. Well, you don't really get to know the kids. You know what I'm saying? And we got fortunate, like we got really good kids, but you don't really know the kids in the portal, and they're there for a reason. Look, they're there to play and get paid. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's fine, but you still got to build your roster through recruiting. You still got to develop your roster. So you got to do all of those kind of things. And then from there, the areas where you've got to improve year in and year out, the portal becomes a supplement. Okay. So that needs to be a part of it. And truthfully, nowadays you have to have finances, like Virginia Tech. And I told the guys on another podcast, they were excited about Franklin coming, and right or wrong on that. I said, the thing you ought to be excited about more so than that is they're going to have $30 million for NIL. That's really the ticket. You got 15 from revenue share, 15 million from private donations. So you have $30 million to go buy people. So that's what you ought to be, happy about. And that's the way with it. If you look at the teams that are winning, the majority of them, have a pretty high portal. Now, it's not sustainable. Eventually that's going to come to an end. And when it does, the good ones will have to adjust. So I still think it gets back to your program with your administrators and your head coach. And then you got to have, the discipline, accountability, and toughness within the program, because, the season's hard, the game is hard, and you got to be able to, win those close battles. And if you do those things, you got a chance to be successful.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, my last one, and I'm going to ask you, just like I asked Coach Abel, I still have 4 years of eligibility remaining. The downside is I'm almost 30 years old. What would it take for me to be a DB in your system?
Well, man, we play a lot of cover two, so you can play the flat, right? So we'll play you in the boundary. We'll play you you'll be a boundary corner for us. We'll play you in the flat. Let you play the flat over there.
And I consider myself to be, a mixture between probably like Riley Moss and Chester Kimbrough. So I'm kind of right there in the middle in terms of size and the physical attributes there. So,
Well, with the nutrition program we got right now and NIL, we can beef you up a little bit, man. You'll be good.
Absolutely. Sounds good to me.
NIL sounds real good.
That's right.
Pass it on down to Daddy.
There you go.
All right, listen, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we got to let you go, because I know it's been over an hour now. So I didn't want you to really comment on, unless you want to, per team. But do you like this new format with this CFP? I mean,
no, I don't like it at all. I mean, look, here's the issue, the issue is it's too inclusive. At the end of the day, it's too inclusive. Okay. I got great respect for John Summerall. I got great respect for JMU, what they've done, but you cannot sit there and say that those two teams are more equipped to give a competitive game or a chance for a championship than Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, or Texas. Okay. So the inclusivity that's involved in college football is a problem. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be in there, but I think it's very difficult to have them in there when you're only going to take 12 teams. So I think that you've got to work on getting the best teams, because that's what the fans deserve, is the best teams in there to give it more competitive. Because the way I look at it right now is really Ole Miss and Oregon have buys. I mean, you can say however you want to say it. I mean, Those guys are really having buys to the next round. So, I think that, again, that goes back to the big people in the room that made that decision. I mean, so, that's something they got to work on. But, there's two standards. I mean, they had a standard for the Notre Dames, Vanderbilts, and Texas to get in, along with the other ones. And then Tulane and JMU had their own set of standards, And at the end of the day, when you make it that inclusive, it's very difficult to get, to have those teams in there when you're only taking 12. So I think they got to work on that.
Is the solution to go 16 or 24, or I mean,
Yeah,
that,
I mean, look, there's always going to be an issue, if you go to 16, well, who's 17, 18, 24, who's 20, just like now in basketball, if it's 68, well, who got hosed, you know what I'm saying? But I do think it's a little bit less talked about when it's 16 or 24 relative to 12, and obviously they want to include because, from a legal standpoint, look, they're afraid Tulane or JMU is going to sue them because they didn't let them in from a legality standpoint. So that's why they're inclusive in it. So, the easiest thing to do is basically, and I still think the conferences need to mean something. So if you win your conference, you should be in. And look, if your commissioner's dumb enough to have the rules that the ACC had to make it where that Duke and Virginia play over Miami and Virginia, that's on your ADs and your commissioner, because that's not very smart. Okay. So I still think it needs to be that the conference championships mean something. And then from there, you have play-in games that could easily been played this week. You know what I'm saying? Because you have basically a bye this week. You'd play, because you could play one more set of games and get plenty of guys, like you're saying, 16 to 24. And if you had those people, you would have people mad, but I don't think you would have the issues that you have right now.
Todd, I think one of the things that, if you ever get back into coaching, on the college level is take these guys, sit them in a room and make them watch the D3 football championships or even the D3 basketball. You don't hear any griping or complaining about any of that. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody suing anybody or threatening to sue anybody for a D3 team not making a playoff run? I mean, or making it into the playoff. I think those guys need to sit there and watch kids. And I'm not saying it pertains to everybody, so I don't want anybody to take it that way. But they need to watch kids that they're playing for heart. They're playing with their heart and playing. Right. That's their motivation. It's not nothing else there.
So I think it's all about getting players grounded, because, like, you see the money and you see that kind of, and it's not the kids' fault, because that's the opportunity and that's what's there. And the adults in the room made the rules the way they are. So I think that's why it's important as a coach, you have a relationship with players to make them understand that, okay, you're getting $250,000 right now. Look, that really ain't shit for the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you want to develop yourself? And I think as a coach, like, you have to embrace it and you got to use it as a tool. Like, in other words, they have goals, and if they're goal oriented and one of them is a financial deal, well, then you need to use it to get them to do the things you want them to do. To give you an example, like when I was at Florida, I had a kid that was a discipline problem, right? And this was when we first started. He was a transfer. He was highly sought after, but this dude was late. This guy he was ticking me off, right? And finally, I just had enough. So what I had a player that I had coached send me one of his game checks. Okay, so the game check was like $500,000. Okay, because those guys get paid by the game in the league, right? So it's like $500,000. So at that time, like, they got their stipend. I don't know. I think he got like $1,200 a month, right? So I brought him in. He knew I was pissed at him, right? And I said, "Look, man," I go, if you do the things that I tell you to do, this is where you can play, okay? And I go, how much do you make a week, or a month, or whatever it was? And he said like $1,200. So I pulled the check out and I said, "All right, look, I coached this guy. He did everything I said. This is what he makes a game. Okay, so here's your choices. If you continue down the road you're on, okay, your ass is going to be making that $1,200 and probably eventually nothing. If you just do what I say to do, this is what your potential is." I never had another trouble out, and the guy's still playing in the league right now. I never had any more trouble with him. And I'm not saying the guy was, always right, but I mean, we saw improvement, and he came around, and the guy's still playing in the National Football League right now. So, I mean, my point is you got to find other ways to motivate them, other ways to get them to do the things you want them to do, and to be the kind of guy you're talking about, where you play for the team, you play with effort, you play with energy. So you got to get all those things. You just got to figure out other ways to do it sometimes.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough for being with us tonight. And, this also proves that Daddy can pull some really good
there you go
for interviews and stuff. So that boosts my confidence again. Just wanted to let you know to expect a call here in the next few days from Danny Miller, the athletic director at Averett College or Averett University. Excuse me, I got to get that in. So we'll get that call in. I'll make sure I touch base with him tonight, and you'll get on the phone with you. I don't know if they can get you to 1.3, but we can probably get 10.3 for you at least. Okay.
All right, buddy.
But this has been very informative for us, and at least I know that me and you share a lot of beliefs. That really makes me feel good deep down inside. So, but
no problem, buddy.
You know, your next stop, we'd love to talk with you again and find out where you're at, and let's keep this thing rolling sometime. And you know, join us anytime.
We'll do it, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
See you guys.
See you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Later.